My next guest works with interactive wearable art. He makes tools that create symbiotic experiences between dancers, musicians, and the audience themselves. Please welcome James Hudson.
Thank you.
First off, I would like to ask you about your beginnings. How were your first steps in the creative field?
Well, I think it started growing up in Australia in a small coastal town, and there wasn't much to do apart from the creative things that my parents got me to do. So they really encouraged me to do art and so on. And they also luckily bought me a computer, and that just changed everything. So I taught myself to program and played a lot of video games, and then decided I wanted to make video games. And so then that one thing led to another, and I ended up working at a games company straight out of school. And this mix of technology and artists working together that set the direction for the rest of my career, I think.
But engineering and art are very different fields. Some might even say that they are opposite sides of the creative spectrum. How do you deal with that?
Well, in my personal experience, I think that they're actually very similar. They're both creative fields. The main difference is that when an engineer builds something, it has to work. Because on artwork failing, you're probably not going to get planes falling out of the sky and people dying.
Okay, so art is not supposed to work. Could you please take your mask off? It's very weird interviewing a robot.
Sure.
But your latest project is about interactive light suits on performance. What led to this project, and what's it all about?
So a few years ago, I was in the multimedia performance, working on another technology project, and one of the choreographers in this project, she had some ideas. We were chatting in the green room, and then we decided to build some small touch sensors and so on. And then one thing led to another, and Alma and I, it's Alma Edelstein, we built on this project, and it snowballed, and one thing led to another, and then we pulled in the light costumes, which are, it's not like the mask, it's a full body wearable suit. And we also brought in musicians, and we needed a network to connect all these people. So what we built was really a performance network, so that different disciplines could plug into what each other were doing.
Yeah, but audience interaction is not always well seen in the fine art world. I don't think they would appreciate you going into a gallery and touching the paintings. But for your practice, it is very important to get the audience to interact with your art. How do you get them to get out of their shells and actually interact with something?
Okay, so the name of this dance project is Saint Vito, which stands for Sensor Technology Visual Interactive Touch Orchestra. And so touch was a big part of it. So it was really difficult to get people to interact with the dancers, because you could touch them and control the music and the light patterns in the venue. And most people are a bit shy, but also people might not be so physically fit. So some people have sore joints, and they find it difficult to move, let alone dance. So to try and get these people to interact, it can be quite challenging. So what we typically do, we wouldn't just go and aggressively go to grab somebody. We train the dancers to offer and encourage people to touch, but if they don't want to, that's fine. So there's a whole art and performance to bringing people out of their shells and getting them to move and interact.
Yeah, I guess it would be very weird if a dancer just comes up to you and is like, please touch me. I think that's a very more subtle way to do it.
We wouldn't put our dancers through that early. You never know who would take up the offer.
Never know how it's going to end. But dance is usually a corporeal expression, while technology is always seen as something external to the body. How do you create this link?
I think that using technology, it's just a part of being human. It's what defines us. And so we've just evolved with tools around us and wanting to augment our bodies and use technology to increase our abilities and our creative potential, because as soon as the technology comes along, immediately artists are jumping in and trying to use it to find new means of expression. So I found it's really not an issue. It's something that we've always been doing.
Apart from your focus with the light suits and the performance arts, you also have other side projects, just as the masks you were showing us earlier. Tell us a little bit about these other projects.
Okay, so the mask that we saw, that was basically because I needed, separate from the dance project, I wanted to be able to perform and not worry about what my face was doing, so give that task to somebody else. So for example, I just had a gig with Lulu Schmidt in Luxembourg, and they couldn't have a rapper there, so I just borrowed his face and borrowed his lyrics, and then I just got on stage instead of him.
Okay.
So it gives us more creative possibilities, and these are these hard pieces. They're not flexible. We needed to develop them because the dance costumes are very fragile. So these they're waterproof. You can kick them across the floor. They're more robust.
Okay, so kicking the dancers is not a good idea. You will damage the suits.
Oh, it's the dancers are the dancers are pretty tough. They
Still, don't kick the
costumes.
dancers.
Yeah, they're very physically active. So.
And how much of Berlin is in your art? Do you think there's part of your project that cannot be done anywhere else than here in Berlin?
I think being in Berlin really it couldn't have happened if we weren't here. There's just a lot of creative people and with a lot of time on their hands. So it's very common here that if you see a performance that you like, you could just go and talk to them and say, oh, that was fantastic, and yeah, we do this thing, and maybe we could try and jam and see if we can collaborate and come up with something. And elsewhere you try that and people think you're crazy, but here it's just the normal thing for artists to do. And I think this whole idea of networking and bringing in different creative disciplines, like that's something that it's very characteristic of Berlin, I think.
Yeah, it is for sure a much more collaborative environment than you might see in other places. Well, James, I would like to thank you for coming.
Thank you.
I would love to see what you come up next. And now, our musical guest.